memorable NPCs.
Well, we've talked in the past about how to create good NPCs.
Yeah.
But creating a great NPC is one thing, but an NPC that people will remember for years and years and years, that's like the whole next level. So,
right.
So what kind of things do you do to try to get that, that sort of memorability?
I think it kind of depends, how they interact with the NPC. Because someone you think maybe they'll interact with a lot, they just kind of brush off and they don't interact with. And so I think it's can be a fallacy to pre-plan too much what an memorable. Let the players choose what the memorable NPC is. Don't you choose and try to foist it on the players, right? Give your NPC some parameters, like we've talked about before in the past. But if they latch onto somebody, that's when you start to make them. You give them all the nuance and the fun that the players react to.
We've talked a lot about if it comes to characters and backstory and that sort of thing. Interjecting character backstory for the player characters as you play. But I feel what builds memorable NPCs is sometimes it's just a random NPC that they encounter that they sort of latch onto, and then you build in this background as you play. Most of the time when I've played with a game where there's a memorable NPC that recurs through a campaign or even extends into other campaigns, it's usually an NPC that is created on the fly and we start to interject backstory into it that adds flavor as we go, and that's what helps the players develop an idea of the character, and you're basing it on what the characters are doing in the game rather than something you created before the game even started.
Yeah, it can be villains too. It can definitely be villains. And I had an interesting situation where there was a minor villain who was kind of supposed to die, in the adventure, and ended up becoming a huge enemy of the players and blamed them for something, of course, that it wasn't their fault, but he blamed them for it, right? And so he became their huge nemesis, and then they ended up defeating him and enslaving him as an undead later, to do their bidding. And so he's at the point now he's trying to convince the better NPC or the better players in the party to release him from his bondage to this one particular character. So it's so even after death, there's an interesting dynamic of an interesting NPC.
I had one that ran across multiple campaigns and ended up being a feature character of the world, where he was a low-level Thieves Guild guy who basically was pretending to be a vampire, and that's how he sort of spread fear amongst the thieves in the city. The players, were sort of bought into this whole thing and obviously believed he was a vampire, and it built up and built up and built up this whole mythology around this guy being a vampire, and they're always trying to hunt him down. Of course, being a vampire, he shouldn't be able to go out during the day, but he could because he wasn't a vampire.
Right.
Which made us like, how did this guy escape? What kind of magic does he have? And it was just this cool little gimmick of this guy. It was just simply, he wasn't a high-level character. He's just a sort of a mid-range, low-level character that was just pretending to be something he wasn't.
Speaking of our quest giver stuff, we try to do this. We're not trying to foist, like I say, the NPCs upon you. We try to make them as interesting as possible, and that they're latch-onable, I guess, for the players to, if they pick a particular person they like, it's really easy to go with that NPC and extend their life in the adventure, really. And we give plenty of callbacks to NPCs, so you have that chance. It's not just a one encounter thing.
Yeah.
There's callbacks for these NPCs, so you can have as much or as little as you want. From our first module, you meet this character called Nira, and she's this mysterious character, and you can really utilize her how you want. She could be an enemy, she could be a friend, she could be a frenemy. You don't know. I like the mysterious nature of her. You don't really know, is she on your side or not. She helps you, and then but she does this other stuff, and really, and you could take that as far as you want. Really, I really like that. We try to encourage that in the modules.
And there's also just sort of little NPCs that you will remember based purely on how they sort of introduce you to the world, like the little boy in Death and Taxes. The little boy doesn't even have a name, but in a lot of the streams that we've watched, people playing Death and Taxes, a lot of the players latch on to the little boy. It becomes the sort of touchstone for the world to discover things about the world. because the little boy is an innocent. That's why they latch on, because there's no threat. They learn about the society from the perspective of this child, which I thought was very, very interesting. That's something you don't really see very often.
Right. If you're going to deal with somebody in the short term and maybe never see them again, give them a few things that are interesting so that the players will remember, that particular person. You can still have a great encounter with just a one-time NPC they may never see again. You can still have a really memorable encounter with those kind of NPCs too.
Also, when an NPC is memorable, that you remember the person, you tend to remember what they were talking about and what they were saying.
That's a great point.
So you put a little bit more trust in what they're saying rather than you just, okay, the NPC says some things and let's move on, and disregard whatever the NPC said. If you're doing well with constructing NPCs in your game and you're following all the sort of tactics that we've talked about in other videos, once you get that sort of memorability part of it, then the players are more likely to pay attention. They're more likely to latch onto these characters and actually soak up the information that's coming out of them. And then obviously it's easier to then give them things that they know or objects they need or whatever through these characters, because they're going to go back to them.
People tend to glaze over if you just do the information dumps, but if you're doing it in an interesting way and maybe in bits and pieces instead of all just one-time information dump. Okay, I am the captain. I am telling you, blah, 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 blah. If you meet him a few times and he tells you the different things, it's much more interesting than the info dump.
Obviously, we provide a lot of information in Quest Givers, and it's kind of up to you as to how much you want to dump it. We try to release a lot of information through NPCs. So super critical information doesn't come in the description. It comes through the NPCs. That encourages the players to actually interact with the characters. So if they're murder hobos, they don't get as far and they don't find the most interesting things,
right?
Because they kill the guy that's got all the information.
Right.
So, at least keep them alive long enough to, suck out what you need from them.
I find it difficult to have memorable. What does that say?
Memorable
NPCs. Well, there's just a two-part answer. First, you need Thaco.
Yes.
What's the second part?
Just kill the NPCs. They don't have to be that memorable.
Yeah.
Why you need to remember them?
They're all on the blue map.
Yeah. You go in the room, you kill the NPCs, and then you remember you killed the NPC. That's it.
That's how God intended it, right?
Right. And Thaco.
The dude was a genius.
You hit the Thaco, you kill the NPC, and then you remember you killed the NPC.
All things memorable.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we helped that guy.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they never seem to, go off the rails, do they?
I don't know if they know what rails are.
No, they don't. Railroad.
They're way off the...
That ticket cost $50. So thank you very much for joining us. It's great seeing you every Friday. If you would like to financially support the making of these videos, you can, of course, check out our website, questgivers.com. We're very thankful to everyone who has already purchased our products. You are all the people that really make this happen. So thank you, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.